Hello to all the rugby league diehards and welcome to another episode of Six to Go. My name is Tom Canfell and it's great to have your company. As we head into today's episode, you know how it works. We will cover 6 topics related to the game or even their own career. My guest this week is James Graham. James is one of the best imports the NRL has ever had. As tough as they've ever come, and in his post-playing career has become one of the most respected opinions in the game. Hope you enjoy our chat. Here's James Graham. I'm joined by, without a doubt, one of the greatest English players that has ever played the game, James Graham, as the next guest of the Six to Go podcast. Jimmy, it's so great to have you on, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. Excited to sit down and have a bit of a chat.
Well, mate, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I'll get things kick-started with what has everyone talking today, and that is West Tigers. Jimmy, I was going to bring up Benji Marshall, but after what happened last night, Benji will have to wait a couple of minutes. Let me just replay the moment from last night that has everyone talking today.
Power comes sideways, which denies Kyle Feldt.
No! That's a disgrace! That is a disgrace! That is a disgrace, Dan. That video wrestler, that was a shocker. That is a shocker.
Are you kidding?
It's got to be successful. It's an escort run. You questioned from before. They retained it because the bunker had inconclusive evidence.
Can I challenge that?
You can't challenge the
offside.
You can't challenge the bunker.
Why not? It's a challenge. It's a fair challenge.
They already cleared that, mate.
That's a disgrace.
Kyle Feldt's got a smile on his face like he knows he got away with something. Wow.
Why are they? What are they challenging? The full-time whistle.
Siren win.
Tell me how you really feel, Jimmy. 24 hours on.
It is a bit strange hearing yourself talk like that. I guess, I care about the game, and deep down, I'm just a big fan at heart as well. But no real allegiance to the Tigers. But it was I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I found it difficult to understand what exactly was being challenged. And then, in my opinion as well, it wasn't a penalty. I fell for the Tigers. It was such an entertaining game yesterday. Just when you thought Cowboys had it home and hosed with a 7-point lead, and then Tigers start coming back, and I thought the clock was going to run out when Dewey was taking the kick at goal, but it didn't, and just thought, it's just over, isn't it? And then, it was crazy. But look, I'm glad that the NRL have come out today and realised they've made a mistake, and they've admitted to it. But that doesn't help the Tigers.
So just to be clear, your mind hasn't changed that it was the incorrect call?
Absolutely not. It was definitely the incorrect call. It wasn't an escort, and I'd have some issue as well with still the fact that it was just challenged. There wasn't a decision to be challenged, if that makes sense. I'm still struggling to wrap my head around how that works.
Should Ashley Klein be officiating this weekend, Jimmy, now that the NRL has said today that the decision of an escort, which he judged on, was wrong?
I've got no issue with him officiating this weekend. But we all make mistakes. Don't want to see him not referee this weekend because of a mistake or a bad game. Like we're all human. I don't think he's got it wrong, didn't he? There's plenty of players that get big decisions wrong that cost games, but they still have the opportunity to play the following week. So, I think he's well within his... Well, I wouldn't want to see him stood down.
Fair enough. Well, we could discuss officials all day, but we will move on to some other news at West Tigers. Your now former colleague, Benji Marshall, has left his media roles and taken up an assistant coach role at West Tigers. That will eventually turn into a full-time head coaching role. James, I have to admit, when I first heard about this, I thought the whole idea was a bit fraught with danger. There are just so many ways that this could go wrong, in my opinion, and I'll give you the simplest one. Benji could work out after a year that he doesn't actually like the coaching life, and West Tigers seem to have already locked themselves into a 5-year plan. But however, I am rooting for Benji. Can you tell me, Jimmy, why I'm wrong, and can you make the case that this was a good move for West Tigers?
Well, look, I think it's easy to look at what could go wrong, but already let's look at what's going right. So instantly he has he's fixed a problem in terms of the Tigers' inability to recruit. So he's put out the fire of Papali'i, apparently being uncomfortable with going. So he's put that at ease. And I think Benji has a lot of pull within the game. So if a big name recruit is thinking of going to the Tigers, he's more likely to go now that Benji Marshall is going to be there. And I think if you look at the example of Latrell Mitchell, for instance, that was offered, quite a significant sum more to join the Tigers over South, which he knocked back. I think if had Benji have been in the hot seat, then things may have been different. I don't know. So I think he's starting to address that problem, and then also they've been accused of, the players have been accused of not having pride or showing passion for the jersey. And speaking to Benji, for him, it was, the only club he wanted to coach was West Tigers. So he fixes that issue almost immediately. So, look back to the Tommy Radonicus memorial game where the Tigers were blown off the park and a lot of fans were pretty angry with that. It's hard to envisage that happening under Benji and Tim Sheens' watch. So of course there are potentials for things to go wrong, but there's potential for things to go wrong on whoever on whoever the Tigers would have appointed. So it's created a lot of headlines and talking points because it's something that's different. But they tried a Premiership winning coach in Michael Maguire, and I guess that didn't work. So they did the same thing with, Green or Flanagan. They'd be accused of just repeating themselves, or if they tried a rookie coach and that didn't work, I'm sure that, with the benefit of hindsight, the knives would be out. But I really like this, and I've spoke at length with Benji privately about this, and I'm pretty optimistic for the Tigers' chances once he takes over.
Can I ask you about your own situation? Do you have any aspirations to one day be a head coach in the NRL?
I don't know. While I was playing, I honestly, it was all I ever wanted to do in retirement. But now I'm here. I see just how hard they have to work, and that's not me saying I don't want to work hard, but it's just a different beast, and the amount of pressure that you and your family would be under. I just need to very carefully consider if that's a life that I want, and also am I good enough to do it? So I need to figure all that out, and I never say never, but I've got some decisions to make, and part of me is really attracted to it, but also part of me is attracted to not doing it.
Let's move on to the news recently of the decision made by Victor Radley. Middle forwards have never been lacking in quantity for England, but Victor Radley is a big addition for the English team. What's your reaction to the news?
Yeah, look, I was delighted that Victor Radley has chosen to play for England. I really am. I knew he was. I knew that he qualified, and obviously he'd been in and around the New South Wales camps and squads before. But for him, after speaking to him talking about that feeling in his chest when he was, making his mind up on this decision, that sold it for me. And I think, like you say, forwards have always been a strong point of the English game. So, he's got some healthy competition in there, but no doubt he'll be in the team, and he'll be without a doubt contributing. And if he plays half as good as he does for the Roosters, he'll do all right for England. Don't worry about that.
Just keeping on international footy for a minute, I believe that if the current New Zealand team remains healthy and they put up the team that they just did in the recent international game, they'll field the best New Zealand team of all time for the World Cup. That's just my opinion. As an Englishman, who would you see as the biggest threat, New Zealand, or is it still Australia to you?
Oh wow, that's a big call on the current New Zealand team. Has had some great teams in the past. Look, I really don't know. I think obviously New Zealand are very strong, Australia are strong, and let's not rule out Samoa and Tonga as well. The Tongans in recent years have beaten Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain. So you'd be a fool to not take them seriously. They were a little underdone in the last Test match, but they didn't have their coach with them, and they had a couple of players missing who still play in the Super League. So they'll be there or thereabouts. So international rugby league, in my opinion, has never been in a stronger position. So let's hope that this World Cup is pretty special.
Jimmy, whilst we're on the topic of rep football, as an Englishman, do you have much of an interest in State of Origin? And can I ask you, is it popular amongst English rugby league fans?
Yeah, I always loved watching my State of Origin. We normally get it on a Wednesday morning in England, so I always kept a close eye on it. Loved watching it. It's not just revered in England. It's probably our product that gets played around the world. It's something that is very well known about, and a bit of a fixture on the international sporting calendar. And I was there at Game 1 and Game 3 this year, and while Game 3 was something else, the intensity of that match was sensational. It was a pleasure to watch.
I know it's easy to get caught up in the moment, but I've watched Game 3 back a few times now, and I truly believe it's definitely in the conversation for the best game I've ever seen. What did you make of that contest last week? Yeah,
like I say, it was brilliant to watch. Series decider on the line, two teams going hell for leather. There's some of the dark arts of rugby league were played, but there's plenty of skill on display as well. So yeah, it was a sensational game. If we had that every Origin series, it wouldn't it be great? But it was a very special game. Like where it ranks in terms of Origins, I don't know. That's not for me to say. But yeah, it was a healthy reminder to everyone just how good our product can be.
There was a lot made of New South Wales selections, both pre and post game, and in my opinion, rightfully so. I'd like to get your opinion because you're like an impartial judge here. But I know personally as a Queensland fan, when New South Wales decided to leave out Josh Addo-Carr, Jack Whiten and Regan Campbell-Gillard, it certainly doesn't make me less confident.
Yeah, look, it's always going to be the case. New South Wales have a bit of they always have a selection problem due to the sheer number of players that they usually have to pick from. So there's always going to be much room for debate, and I guess with the benefit of hindsight, people, it's easy to say I would have done this or I would have done that. But I think New South Wales have just got to back the people that they selected and get a better job done. Like, I mean, if you look at Game 2, for instance, they were streets ahead, weren't they? But rugby league is, it's 2.5 weeks in between those games, and it was a huge turnaround. And you can't underestimate the impact that the Queensland crowd had on that game as well. They make a very special atmosphere. So look, we can't get bogged down in selections, and everyone's got their own opinion. I'm sure if you went across if you asked everyone in New South Wales, there'd be many a different side picked. So Freddie's not going to be able to please everyone.
Let's move on to the Dragons. Jimmy, the media got a little bit bored last week and decided to put Anthony Griffin in the crosshairs. To me, this is borderline ridiculous criticism. A big win by the Dragons on Friday night against Manly from a club that had to go through a rough period 12 months ago and turn over a big part of their roster. Where do you see the state of the Dragons at this point in time?
Yeah, look, it was strange last week to see Coach Griffin's future being spoken about publicly. It literally as if some journalists had just got bored and almost made it up. I think the I'm right in saying there was a board meeting, but it was a monthly board meeting, so where I don't believe Coach Griffin's future was even spoken about. I mean, it'd just be ridiculous to sack him at this point. Like, they're still in the fight for the 8. They obviously they won on Friday and now on equal points with 8th position. Obviously in a bit of a logjam there, and there's plenty of work to do. But I think at the start of the season, if you just presented anyone connected with the Dragons this position in terms of being level on points with 8th and 6 games to go with plenty to fight for, I think this is a position that most people involved at the club would have accepted.
I'd just like to talk about the recruitment of the Dragons for a second. Let's start with, in my opinion, the best addition this year, and that is Moses Sully. He's been such a strong asset for the Dragons all year, and he's still very young. How much better do you think he can get?
Yeah, look, Moses has been a phenomenal talent, and he's had his indiscretions, but his face seems to be fitting down at the Dragons. Just unfortunately for him, he's had that bad syndesmosis injury. So, yeah, it's hard to see him recovering in time. I'm not too sure on what that recovery time is, but he has been sensational. And with him and Zach Lomax forming a pretty quality centre combination, it gives the club, whoever's on that. Well, both of them are on the field at the same time. It's genuine strike on both sides of the field, which is obviously fantastic for us to have. And Moses came under, there's a lot of eyeballs on him and a lot of questions around whether, the Dragons could, get into his potential and get that out of him. And they certainly seem to have done that. I've been really impressed with the way he's played so far this year.
The Dragons was a big topic of conversation on NRL 360 last week, a show that you're obviously involved with. In particular, the recruiting and how they've taken a bit of a money ball approach to their team with people like Andrew McCulloch, Josh Maguire and Mo Zembai. Last week, Paul Crawley said Andrew McCulloch is done as an NRL hooker and these moves put pressure on Anthony Griffin's job. James, I'd like to read you a quote from 12 months ago. I think what Griffin does is pretty smart, but it's the long game. It's not going to give immediate results where Moses comes to the club next year and it puts them in top 4 position, but it certainly can make them challenge for the 8 again. James, this was said by a guy named Paul Crawley. So to me, this is very hypocritical because it has brought improvements and they're in a position to challenge for a finals berth. What's your opinion on these additions that have come from other clubs? And can you tell me what they've brought on the field, but also off the field as well?
Yeah, look, obviously there was a lot of talk around the recruitment and, there's a lot of experienced players brought in that a lot of other clubs were contributing towards the wage, and I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Excuse me. Any signing is a good signing at the right price, and I like what Andrew McCulloch brings to the football club. I think he complements the spine really well. His experience is so valuable to the likes of Ramsey or Sloan at the back, and obviously Young Amone as well in the halves alongside Ben Hunt, and the next one up is Jaden Sullivan as well. So. There's a lot of young, inexperienced players within that spine. So to have the experience of Maka and Benny Hunt is so vital for them. I think sometimes that the spine is about balance and what works for your team, not necessarily individually.
And I want to point out something else out here too, Jimmy. This is a team that before a ball was kicked at the start of the season, and a lot of people forget this, they were favourites for the wooden spoon. And I know plenty of so-called experts who picked them for the spoon. Now, to me, this is all ridiculous. Can I ask you, like you've said, I suppose, if I was to give you this spot at the start of the year, tied for 8th, in the finals hunt, 6 weeks to go, surely what after happened last year, with Barbecue Gate effectively ruining their season, surely any Dragons fan would take this scenario, Jimmy? Yeah,
well, like I said, I think most people at the club would. Would we like to be higher? Absolutely. Would we? We'd love to be challenging for the top 4. But if you take all things into account, especially with the way last season finished, this is. I think if you take all things into consideration, with how they finished last season, and whatnot, and the new players coming in and the youth that's being promoted. like I say, to be challenging for the 8 and equal on points with 8 is a sought after position. And now with 16 games to go, I believe they've got themselves where it's a position that their destiny's in their own hands. And people will look at the draw and go, oh, the Cowboys and then the Sharks, but I'm backing the team to get the results that they need.
Jimmy, last week I had Josh Hannay on the show, and I said if you were picking a team to play for your life at the moment, Ben Hunt is getting a start somewhere. Is he one of the most underrated players in the game still?
I don't know if he's underrated. I think people are starting to realise his value now. He's obviously, I think before Burton went behind closed doors, he was. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I think before voting went behind closed doors, he was top of the Dally M leaderboard. So. I don't think he's underrated. I think people do appreciate what he brings, and no doubt every single Queenslander would certainly not be saying he's underrated with the performance in the last Origin series. He was sensational.
Has he changed much since when you were part of this Dragons team? He's probably had to take more of a vocal leadership role without people like yourself there, I'd imagine.
Yeah, obviously when he came to the club in 2018, he certainly hit the ground running and was really good. And then, it wasn't just Ben, but the club went through a couple of lean years there in 19 and 20. So, but he's always had that ability to play this well, but he's just probably got a few more that are contributing and, making his job that much easier. But no doubt about it, he's the heart and soul of that team at the moment. He's just in red hot touch, and you find that players like Benny, that form is, it's infectious and they keep going. And when they're on a streak, they're just, everything they touch turns to gold. And Benny's in one of those, having those moments at this season especially. And let's hope. And if he just keeps doing what he's doing, it will continue on into September.
How big of a priority should it be for the Dragons to keep him long term? Because you'd imagine the clubs would be circling if he was free on the market.
Yeah, look, I think he's got next year at the club, and then I think by that time he'll be 33, and if he continues in this vein of form, undoubtedly other clubs will look at him. How many years he's got left, I'm not too sure, and I'm not too sure on how his body is, but surely if he continues on, the club would be making the retention of Ben Hunt a priority.
Jimmy, I have to congratulate you on your own podcast that you've started. It's absolutely fantastic. It's called The Buy Round. First of all, can I ask you why you decided to start it, and have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been on my radar for a while. I do have lots of ideas go through my head from time to time, but this one seems to have stayed. And then it was just a conversation with a couple of friends of mine that were able to do the real heavy lifting and get this thing off the ground and do all the things that I can't. So once we'd had those conversations, it just seemed silly not to. And I guess I was always comfortable with just trying it. If it didn't work out, well, it just stops and ends. So rather than to, I guess, don't die wondering, just give it a shot and see what happens. There was very little risk involved in setting this up, and I'm really happy we decided to, because I've really enjoyed it, and as well I think judging from the feedback, I think the punters are enjoying it too. So we'll see about the plan is for it to continue on, and hopefully we'll have some really cool guests come on in the next couple of weeks and months.
You spent an episode with Cameron Ciraldo. I don't know about you, Jimmy. I'm actually starting to feel a bit bad for him because he's being talked up that much. If he's anything short of Jack Gibson, people might be disappointed. Just in the time you spent with him, can you tell me what he's like and what you came away thinking after he was on your podcast?
Yeah, I was very impressed with him. Very impressed. And, look, he's obviously been involved at the Panthers for a long time now. So experienced there, and no doubt he'll make a great coach.
Jimmy, did you feel any pressure coming out of your career to graduate from former player to being someone who has, in my opinion, one of the most respected opinions in the game?
No, it's just that player transition was quite difficult, really, to be honest. It's a hard one when you can prepare for it, but then when it happens, there's it's a huge change for all ex-professional athletes. So that was the main thing for me, is to making sure that I transitioned out of it well. And I guess any time I talk within the media, I always just be myself and give my honest opinion on things. And I think, I'd like to think people, accept that for who I am. I'm not always going to be right. But yeah, I guess it's just try and come from a place of passion and think ideas through. And that's sort of where I come from with my opinions on the game.
Well, James, I can't thank you enough for your time today on the 6 to Go podcast. Hopefully it's not the last time.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you for having me on, Tom. Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
A big thanks to James for coming on the show. And remember, you can catch him on Fox League, Triple M, and his own podcast, The Buy Round, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, if you want to get in contact with me, you can on Twitter @TCanfell. And don't forget to give the 6 to Go Facebook page a like as well. My name is Tom Canfell. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And until next time, this has been the 6 to Go podcast, and that is full time.